Hi, and welcome to Freebird Media. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Rick Mehta, Professor of Psychology from Acadia University. Professor, it's great to have you here. Thanks for speaking with me.
Oh, my pleasure. This is
Uh,
my first interview, so
well, I
I'm a
appreciate it.
little nervous.
I saw your speech, which is on your YouTube channel, which is called Free Speech in Universities, Threats and Opportunities. And I really liked it. I thought you did a really good job at sort of giving a timeline of different events that have happened in academia over the last year or so, and showing how there are real threats to free speech and especially academic freedom. And I really liked the way you sort of showed what's happening and then proposed some practical solutions for especially for Acadia at the end. So anybody who's watching this now, I really recommend that you definitely check out that talk. It's on Dr. Mehta's YouTube channel, and it's really good. So I'd love to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, so you're a professor at Acadia, which is out east. How bad do you think that the problem there with academic freedom is compared to here in Ontario or anywhere else in the country?
Well, my impression is that the problem started in the U.S. and then from there it seems it goes to Ontario and BC, and then from there spreads outwards to the rest of the country. And so, in terms of what happened here at Acadia, is that when we had our presidential search earlier this year, so we had our two candidates who came and presented. And so what I picked up on in terms of the candidate who's now our president, so we're both looking at both what the candidates both did say and what they didn't say. So what was a warning sign here is the other candidate, she mentioned the importance of talking, listening to people, critical thinking. So that was one aspect that I like about her. Not only did our current president during his candidacy not mention those things, but he mentioned that he was on a committee. I couldn't remember what the name of the committee was, but that committee had thought it would be a good idea for the universities to commit to social justice. And so no one else picked up on it because I think everyone just thinks, oh, social justice, it's a nice cause, we'll be helping the poor. It seems
Right.
to have an overly rosy image, so no one else even picked up on that. So that was one of the issues that I wrote in my letter, but unfortunately, he got approved, I think, unanimously, became our president.
Well, so there was overwhelming support for him, like from the student body.
Well, at least from the committee anyway that did the voting from the board of governors committee. So there was unanimous support there.
I see.
But of course, not seeing the letters that came in, what others had to say, it's hard to know because I know there were student comments, but unless they wrote in and their views were represented, it's hard to know what happens behind the scenes.
Right, I see. So right now you would say that the current climate is pretty bad, probably on par with everywhere else.
It's slowly getting there. So basically, I mean, the way it's working here is by stealth. So basically, in terms of our coffee selection, we used to have, some places where you could buy fair trade, other places where you could buy, your standard AL Van Hoot or something like that. But in September, we became a fair trade campus. And I don't think anyone thought much of that. Oh, fair trade is nice, so nothing wrong with supporting that. So it didn't cause any waves. And so now I notice, I'm not sure if this is an official announcement or not, so I'm not but I know that one of our Canada research chairs is going to be in social justice.
Right.
And again, no one thinks that's a problem because it's something, at least in theory, they believe it's a worthy, noble effort.
Right. That brings me to a question I have actually. In your solutions or your recommendations for opportunities, you talk about joining the Heterodox Academy, which I've heard about through the work of Jonathan Haidt, and I'm assuming you're probably familiar with his work on moral psychology.
Yeah, so actually, I am a member. As far as I can tell, I haven't checked the membership in a while, but I was definitely the first member from Acadia. I don't know if there's others who've joined since then.
Oh, cool. Can you just give a brief description of what it is, Heterodox Academy?
Yeah, so basically, in terms of the two groups that I belong to, so one is, of course, the Heterodox Academy, and so our goal is we're committed to the idea of viewpoint diversity on the university campuses, just the idea they have different perspectives. Um, so the general assumption that I'm working from is that when I'm there as a professor in the class, of a moral obligation to students not to tell them how to think, not what to think. And so the idea is I can't impose my views, but give them just what the different perspectives are. So let's say a libertarian, a conservative, a liberal. So then they can just decide what they think is best for themselves and society as they move forwards. So that's just the general idea, is that we're committed to viewpoint diversity, not having any one perspective dominate.
Right.
So that's one group I belong to, and the other is the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship. So the short form for that is SAFS. And so they've been quite active of late, especially with all the incidents related to free speech in particular. But that group has been around since the 90s, and back then in the 90s, I think it formed to go against what was the first appearance of the equity movement, to say, no, let's actually just focus on merit. So that's when they first formed. But I think for the longest time they had a reputation of just being a group of far-right academics, and so they were ignored, saying, oh, well, COUT is the one, the Canadian Association of University and Teachers is the one that's the respected group, that's the voice for all academics, and I think most people actually take that at face value.
Oh, okay. I see. Well, backing up for a minute to the Heterodox Academy, I mentioned Jonathan Haidt there. Are you familiar with his work on moral psychology?
I bought his book as part of my reading list. I think I've been more focused on his videos. So the ones that had the greatest impact on me is the one on Truth University versus Social Justice University, and Strengthening University versus Coddling University. So I know more of that aspect than his work per se.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is you're a professor of psychology, so I was wondering, from your perspective, why do you think the equity doctrines of social justice, or the social justice movement, is so attractive and so popular right now with young people? What is it psychologically that's why is this growing as a movement so much?
I think people get the impression that it's that sense of altruism and community, that I'm looking out for my fellow human being. But and on the surface, it does sound like that until you actually look at the details below. And so I actually found it interesting in the context of our contract negotiations. And I posted a lot about that if you look through my public posts. So what's kind of interesting about that is their commitment to their own members, but when it comes to people who have precarious employment, let's say through other parts of campus, no one speaks for those part-time employees. When it came to salaries, like how could we get our share of the pie? But we have all of our support staff who are essential for allowing us to do our job. So let's say the physical plant workers who clean the campus so people can get in when it's the middle of winter, the people who do the food service workers, they came in on winter storm days to make sure students could get food in their residences. But no one's speaking for them, and they're getting the short end of the deal, and yet no one even acknowledges them. So that's something I try to talk about actually in my classes, to point out some of the inherent hypocrisy behind the social justice movement. It's not about speaking up for the poor. It's just, join our group and we speak for ourselves, at least from a union perspective, and how I see it.
Right. Well, I don't doubt that at all. I think you're probably exactly right. I see that hypocrisy myself on a daily basis with social justice movements. Actually, just recently, I found out that there's a media platform that's like a social justice media platform that's been stealing some of my videos and then putting them on their own site and asking for donations. And I think that their rationale for that is that because I'm a white person, they're sort of justified in stealing it. But what they don't actually know is a lot of the people that volunteer to help me make those videos aren't necessarily white people. And they deserve some compensation, I think, for their labor too, So that's just another example where I see like people claiming to care about like justice and the poor, and then not really realizing indirectly or directly they're not really helping anybody.
Yeah, no, I actually used to be quite far left until 2015. I used to actually get emails from Press Progress and whatever group they were before. And yeah, it was in 2015 that I started having an awakening, and that's when I changed. So the turning point came with a close friend who I used to really respect, and so I hadn't seen him in years, and we were talking, And then everything was the fault of the military-industrial complex, including obesity rates in this country, and why people in my subdivision didn't want sidewalks and didn't want to have street lights. And he would not listen to the more reasonable alternative, which is people didn't want their property taxes to go up, which is why they didn't want to have sidewalks, and that for the streetlights, a lot of people just like having their privacy, even though it does mean that there's an elevated risk of having a break-in. But those did not. He just said, "Well, that's all brainwashing them from the military-industrial complex." And no matter what I said, it was all that or Stephen Harper's fault. And I
Right.
mean, I wasn't a Harper. I wasn't necessarily a fan of the prime minister, but I thought that was a bit overkill.
Yeah, for sure. I resonate with your story a lot. I'm sympathetic. I'm following a very same timeline. I'm 31. I was a leftist my whole 20s basically, and right around the end of 2015, 2016, I just started to be confronted with so much hypocrisy and confusion that I was like, this is a little bit absurd now. And now I'm often labeled like a far right person and I don't consider myself in any way like a traditional conservative. So there's a deep irony there, and I think we're both part of a whole movement of people that are sort of displaced now, because I think we're all sort of empathetic people that want the best for people, but the radical left is sort of taken over the left, I think, and they're at this point I think they're like an ideology similar to a cult, and that they're not even in reality anymore.
Oh,
Would you agree with that?
oh yeah, no, definitely. It's just been interesting. Yeah, just with that perspective, just yeah, because basically what happened in 2015, I mentioned those conversations. So from there, I just decided I'd switch to just what the ideas are, stick to ideas and principles, and not tied to any particular ideology. And what was interesting is that, yeah, in our lead up to our contract negotiations, I actually asked to meet with one of our equity reps. And so, in retrospect, what actually made me uncomfortable is that during that conversation, the referral was about your role model as a brown person, that you could make it. And so now, in retrospect, that actually does make me uncomfortable, because I don't want to be there as a role model for my students based on my ethnic heritage or skin color. It's based on my actions. Because the way I see it is, if I go out and I drink and drive, as an example, and I get pulled over and I'm a complete embarrassment to my university, there's no reason why any other member of the East Indian community should suffer because of that, right? They shouldn't encounter any racism. So if I'm having that logical argument, then the flip side should also be the same too, is that whatever I do is due to my own actions, not due to my skin color. And I don't want to be a role model for my students based on that. If anything, I'd find it kind of condescending that someone would want to work on me on that basis. Like, I'd probably just turn them away if that was what they wanted to work with me for.
Right. So with that attitude and the fact that you're not really supportive of these social justice movements, how much of on a personal level, in your personal life, how much of a hit have you taken for publicly sort of speaking up against them? For example, about a year and a half ago, I lost the majority of my friends, I would say, on a personal level, because I'm not supportive of social justice movements. And so, have you taken a big hit as well?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I have a lot lower of a profile, and I just kind of keep to myself on campus. So it's interesting that that when it came to the talk, what I found really interesting was that the room was filled with students when they came. So I think it was somewhere in the 46 to 50 range that were in the room that night. But because it was also broadcast through the ACTS radio, the number was in the hundreds. So it was like it would have filled up our large lecture hall on a Wednesday night if everyone was actually in there in person. So I think it would have been over 300 students, 300 people in total. And if I assume that the breakdown of the audience could apply to the listenership, then it would be majority students. So I think the students were actually generally interested in the topic. But when it came to the lead of the talk, I sent out multiple emails to say that, don't worry, this is not going to be a rally or anything like that. And I gave a rationale for what I was doing, and stated explicitly that it was going to be an academic talk, not a rally or anything like that. What else did I do? I sent a detailed outline. Various faculty members said, "Oh, make sure you address the issue of hate speech." So I even added that whole section in that I wasn't planning to in the first place. So that whole section was due to faculty input, and from the VP academics being saying very explicitly deal with this. And so none of them showed up. No administrators show up. The only there was two faculty members and the spouse of a faculty member, and they came for the sole purpose of coming to insult me. So if you listen to the radio version, I can always send you the link. So at the end, there's three questions. The first came from the spouse of one of my colleagues, and he just tore into me based on 2 slides out of 70, and then he even followed up the next day with a 1-page email. So yeah, just based on the Brookings study saying, oh, even though it was released a couple days ago, there have been already these faults that have been found with it, and since then there have been faults, it's been found that those arguments were faulty.
Right.
So there was that, and then a second colleague said, the plural of anecdote is not data, and said, did you find one specific study along this? And I was like, well, I'm not sure. And then other audience members started saying, well, what about the Jordan Peterson case? And God sad. Right. So they started actually standing up for me there. So, and then that's the colleague who then sent an email in response to something I'd said, which was totally irrelevant to the free speech talk, to say, after seeing your talk, I really question your academic integrity. And so she started off by saying there were no references and how I was going to revise history and a whole list of, I have no idea what was in that. I didn't even bother. So I just addressed the first point by saying, well, actually, when the talk was ready and the radio version was released, I circulated a document that had 20 pages of references that would have been longer if I actually put it in an APA format or MLA format. That's also included on my YouTube site so that people can see everything for themselves, because the whole purpose was I went in with that attitude of do not believe a word what I'm saying, go in skeptical, and I'm going to do everything I can to win you over.
Right.
And I know that the majority of the students at the university tend to be sort of on the liberal left end, so that's why I purposely geared it towards having that kind of audience in mind, one who are likely to be feminists, and making sure there would be some kind of message for them, just kind of knowing what my audience was and tailoring it a little bit towards that kind of audience compared to if I was going to be doing the same talk, let's say for the progressive conservatives or a different group, then I'd tailor it in a very different fashion, but I was very targeting that for sort of a center-left audience.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point, too, that you come to, because as a psychologist or a professor of psychology, I'm wondering, I'm pretty influenced by the work of Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Haidt and people like that, so I understand that your biology plays a role in your personality, and that is going to temperament you, kind of sway you one way or the other in politics, left or right. And so I also understand that all people kind of we all have our own subjective reality tunnel, and our mind kind of does its best to approximate what reality is, but nobody's really objective. So I understand that in debates, two different people or two different groups of people can have sort of different types of psychology at work, and so it can make discussion difficult. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, especially in the current climate. So actually what I ended off with class on Wednesday, so we're doing the section on judgment and decision making, and so I did the confirmation bias the way I would normally, and then I said we're unfortunately seeing this in the real world, and so I just showed the abstract for a study I'll go into more next semester, and it shows that actually both the conservatives and sort of the left liberals, when it comes to science denial, they both do the same thing just for different reasons, and so they're motivated to see the world in their own specific way. And so then I built on that by saying that unfortunately our educational system, especially the universities, are making that problem worse because we shifted so far to the left that you're only seeing one side, that when you actually go out into the real world, you're not even capable of having a discussion in a humane or civil way with someone else because you just become so emboldened. And so that next semester, I'm actually going to be countering a lot of what you've been coming to believe. And so I'll talk. And so I just showed a quick picture from that recent study from the Veterinary Association in the States. So now 80% of new students in vet school are women. So where's the systemic discrimination there?
Right.
And no one talks about that.
So I know, like, Gad Saad, for example, has been very vocal about saying that he feels that the sciences are at realistic risk of being corrupted by the ideology of the radical left. So, how realistic do you think this problem is, and how fast could it become a big problem in the sciences, in academia?
Well, I think it already is a problem. So, in terms of what I put in the talk, is that when you're, and this is, I guess, in line with Jonathan Haidt has said, is that it limits what questions that you ask, and then how the data are interpreted. So in the talk I went into in terms of policies that we have at the university, like the systemic discrimination, that the only basis for it is going to be, or like in terms of, or I guess, you have the disparities. Okay, so how do we interpret that? The only interpretation is taken as systemic discrimination. All others are not even discussed or talked about. So then, given that, what's the basis for the discrimination? Unconscious bias and stereotype threat. And so when we look at unconscious bias, the evidence for it is minuscule. The stereotype threat, we're actually seeing the opposite. So the study I cited was with the one looking at chess players. They tested the model of stereotype threat there on a sample of like 5 million and found that it was in favor of women. So the two bases for that, the so-called training that we're getting, are based on ideology, not even any solid evidence. So that's what we're seeing there. And so in terms of what happened with the Blake post, that what happened was during the lead up to what was supposed to be a strike, our student newspaper, the Athenaeum, had put in an article. Basically what happened was a group of about 45 profs got together and wrote a letter saying, both sides are to blame for our negotiations not going well, and they proposed some solutions. And so there I commented then on how our universities are coming this, school of left-wing indoctrination. I talked about how that has implications for the employment. Because if you go in and you're going into a workplace and you can't get along with anyone, employers are not going to want to hire university students. And so I kind of went on about that. And the response I got was from a colleague in the Department of Politics, and all it said was LOL, and didn't rebut it. And I found it interesting, because I started off by saying, making a comment, I think I know how postmodernists work, is you present them with an idea, the way that they'll do it is they'll just ignore it altogether and talk about something else. So that's how I started that. And so he actually proved my point for me, so I didn't actually have to do much for that.
Right.
Okay. So that leads into the comment that Blake made. So basically the post I put that morning was, in the event that there is the strike tomorrow, because that was highly expected that was going to happen. So I said tomorrow morning, I'm prioritizing the social contract I have with my students over the legal contracts I have with my employer and union, because my plan was to have this active civil disobedience where I was saying my students have paid for an education and they're going to get one. And so I was going to hold classes regardless of the strike. I was crawling across the picket line and hold classes, because to me there didn't seem to be any rationale for actually going on strike this time. It was all about money, and I couldn't justify that, and especially when no one told the students what was happening or why the strike vote was being held. So the way I saw it was the students were the only one acting like adults, much like what happened with the situation in Ontario. And so I'm going to side with the students, and I want nothing to deal with either the faculty or administration. So I was going to make a really strong public stance if the strike did go forth. So that gives you the backdrop. So Blake then said, you should, the way you're going about things is all wrong. You should not cross the picket line. So that was the first issue. And then he said, he was trying to address the issue what I'd raised with the Ath article. And he said, no, when you think that someone else really needs to look at our curriculum to see that that's balanced, he was equating that with McCarthyism. So I took a deep breath and said, okay, if you really believe that, so I first dealt with the union issue, then I said, if you really believe that, why don't you go to New Real Peer Review on Twitter and see what passes for academia these days? And then I went on to say, if you don't think that's going to happen at Acadia, that's not even a possibility, why don't you go to the following link here and tell me how that in any way is a positive reflection of the arts or education. And I was referring to the Faculty Arts and School of Education. That's what I was implying. And so then I just posted the link there and didn't say anything beyond that. And so when you click on the link, then the title is something along the lines of an ethnography of my sexual identity through the perspective of interpretive dance. So that was what was on the Research and Graduate Studies website, and the group that gave an award, the acronym for it is ARTS, and their own statement says is that what made this thesis groundbreaking was dance was the central focus and not an add-on.
Okay.
And so there
Wow.
was trying to, yeah, so that was my way of trying to deal with this affects the kind of research questions that we deem to be worthy. And so in my comment to him, I said, look at that and tell me why the general, based on that, would the general public support this? So that's all I said.
Wow. Oh,
And you can look at the post for yourself. It's there for the public to see.
right. And so where do you stand now? Like, is everything been resolved though? Like, there's a contradiction there, obviously, with the harassment policy, right? So,
Yeah. Well, so what happened was that I think I posted on the Sunday night. Let me just bring up the calendar here. Yeah, that was on Sunday the 26th, and then on the 30th. So I actually had my door closed. I was just working. I got a knock on my door. And so it turned out to be the dean. He said, "Oh well, I just wanted to see if you're in. I'm glad that you're here. I just wanted to talk to you about something." I said, "Okay, come on in, let's chat." And he said, "It's about your Facebook post." And so I thought it was going to be about crossing the picket line, or maybe I thought the one that might have caught. I know I ruffled some feathers when I said that if the strike goes through, the students and everyone should write for back to work legislation. And so in an earlier conversation, he said, you probably don't want to go around telling people that you openly want to bust the union. It's probably not a good idea. So I thought maybe there's going to be something along those lines.
right.
But instead, it was about the post to the Research and Graduate Studies website. And so what was disturbing about that was he said, unfortunately, regardless of actually your intent, what happens is that when you post a statement like that, you're ridiculing the student's coming out experience, and because of the hurt feelings then that arise, you'd be violating the university policy, and that would be a basis for a charge of homophobia. And so then he said, for this reason, I'd strongly recommend that you take the post down. And so my response is, I don't think that has anything to do with my action in my post. I think that's more of a poor reflection of the university's policy. So change the policy, and then we're all good. And or I might have said something along those lines. I can't remember what I said, but at least I was definitely thinking that.
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
And so then he's like, "Are you sure this is a battle you want to do?" And I said, "I don't really have an intention of becoming the Jordan Peterson of Acadia, but I think this one is worth fighting for." And so then he got irate and left.
Are you surprised that your identity as a non-white person doesn't bring you any protection at all? As on their victimhood hierarchy, you might have some points there, but they don't seem to. That never comes into play, eh?
No, it did for that. And what was interesting in that conversation was he said, "I can't reconcile how your actions just now with what you did earlier in the summer." So what happened was early in the summer, this on Twitter, a group called the Cape Breton Alt-Right Group, at least that's their email address or something along those lines. So what happened was they actually doxed members of our LGBTQ community, as well as one of our academics and one of our faculty members. And as soon as I found out about that, I sent an email to our university community saying, "This has happened. Just keep your eyes open. Be alert." And so he said, "I can't reconcile how you did something like that, and now you've turned around and done this kind of strongly implied despicable action." And he was equating my posting the link there as doxing the student who wrote the thesis.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Those are not
That's
anywhere.
crazy. Yeah, that's not
Those are
not doxing at all. So obviously, that's a very clear-cut example of either or thinking. I think, like if you're with us or against us with the ideology overall, right? Like it's very black and white, it lacks any nuance. So it's just you're with us or against us kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there was that, and just the part I found most disturbing is that regardless of intent, we have to look at the outcome. So that's what I thought. That is a very problematic policy. Is we're looking at outcome without even considering intention, and mean, I'm no expert on the law, but I don't think that's inconsistent with Canadian law.
True. I would say from my experience is that the radical left are very Machiavellian in the sense that the ends justifies the means. So they're not. I can't really engage them in conversation because if they've already pre-decided that we live in a white supremacy or something like that, then no matter how much of a victim I might be or someone else, it's justified in the end game. So you would agree with that in the sense it's very much an ends justifies the means kind of ideology, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's all about the outcome, and so whoever is offended, that's the person who determines then what'll be discussed.
Right. And so,
And so yeah, so as an academic, I just thought, well, how are we going to how can we solve any kind of problems if we can't even discuss them? If someone's feelings get hurt, and that then limits discussion, that has serious implications for our ability to actually work as academics. So that's why I refused. And so then in class, I actually brought it up in my intro psych class, and when people saw that, their jaws just dropped. Because I showed them the tweets and the Facebook posts, so they could see for themselves what had happened. And so in my the morning class, I asked them just their thoughts. And so one student said, "Well, I don't understand this autoethnography. So maybe is there some validity to it?" And I said, "Oh, I'd be happy to have that discussion about the pros and cons of that. Maybe there's something I'm missing." So that student was like, "Okay, that's fine." Then another student said, "Well, in any kind of discussion, you're bound to have your feelings hurt at some point. So that doesn't seem like a rationale."
right.
So that's what happened to my intro psych on the Friday, December 1st. And so then what happened over the weekend was I canceled my research methods class for Tuesday because we finished all the content, so there was no need to hold a class. So I sent an email to my class and saying, just keep a heads up, there might be some media coverage on this. And so I showed the posts, and here's my Facebook post. So a student there forwarded to the dean. The dean then said to me, "How dare you say I requested that you take down the post? What I said was I recommended." And he also copied that on the BP academic and the dean of research and graduate studies.
Mm.
So in my response to all three, I said, "Okay, we can talk about words, whether because what I put in my tweet was advised, and I said, okay, my Facebook was asked, so I could change that to recommended if that would make you happy. I don't mind, if you think that's more accurate, I'd be more than happy to do that. But I said, you're missing the big picture here, which is why did we even have that conversation at all in a university setting?"
Right.
And then signed off. So I got a response from the Dean of Research and Graduate Studies saying, well, we need to think about the implications of this if it goes to the media in terms of how that's going to harm the student. We should maybe have a talk about that. So that was what she had said. And shortly after that, then I got a request for the dean saying, I want to, or from the dean's administrative assistant saying, Jeff wants to meet with you for an hour, and that's it. And so then I was going to bring someone with me. And then as I emailed some other, pardon me?
Like legal representation, you mean? Bring with you?
A union rep, just another union, just a colleague in the capacity as being a fellow union member.
Right.
Yeah, and then I want to email some colleagues, some of the voices of dissent at other universities. One had a really good comment, which was, well, why are you going on someone else's timeline? And so one maybe get some time to seek a lawyer, get some legal advice, take your time with it. And so then when I asked him for the specifics, then he said, oh, well, it's about what you wanted to meet with me about, which I think is to imply then the email from the colleague where she'd said all those things about my academic integrity. So it was a vague response. So I'm thinking I might try to deal with that in email and maybe get legal representation first so everything is just worded properly there. And maybe we can actually even deal with that issue, because that I think does deserve some kind of a formal complaint, because that was just so outrageous. And the attempt was clearly to, diminish me, how people would see me as an academic but without any actual merit behind our argument. So that one I think does need to be addressed. And I think he in the capacity of dean, should have done that on his own, not needing me to actually request that.
Right. Right. Well, I commend you for being so vocal on this issue. You're a part of a minority of professors that are willing to speak up. And so I thank you for that. What's happening with you right now is happening simultaneously with what's going on at Laurier here in Ontario with Lindsay Shepherd. Are you following that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
with in her case, actually, when that happened, I actually did write a letter of support for her. So basically, what happened was the group I belonged to, SAF, so Mark Mercer had written in a letter, and so then I just kind of used just is very opening, just the address and the who to CC to. I kind of just used that and wrote in my own letter, and with that, I also sent a copy to David Haskell because he's been an inspiration. I told him,
Yeah.
I have no idea why I'm sending this to you, but I just felt, but I thought I'd send this your way. His response was, "No, I understand completely. It's like an itch you can't scratch. You eventually have to scratch it." So his response is, "Yeah, we do this because we have to."
Right.
And yeah, that was really quite touching.
Yeah, I can understand that. I feel like that's partly why I do this stuff with Freebird Media, and I've spoken with Haskell too, and I really admire him for speaking up. That's why I want to try to give as many of you, you and your fellow academics who are willing to come forward, I want to try to give you the spotlight to plead your case because I don't see it happening anywhere else, and I feel morally compelled somehow to shine a light on these issues, because you can see the toxic effect that this academic factory ideology that they're pumping out is going to have, I think, on society in large. Correct?
Oh, definitely. I think we're seeing it already in education. I mean, over the past 20 years, literacy rates have dropped, numeracy rates have dropped. When they're coming in, like I can see it when they ask questions, they don't know how to take notes, so everything is just based off what they copied off a slide, but without any other information actually written there. So I'm seeing these kinds of patterns, and they seem to be getting worse each year in terms of the impressions. So a lot of times the emails I'm dealing with are about, what do I need to know from class, even though I've sent emails about that. So
Right.
and those seem to be increasing. The mental health in terms of even what visits to our counseling services, so those seem to be going up with now loneliness and social isolation being I think that might be the number one cause, or it's definitely getting up there now.
So are you saying that the social justice the progressive movements and attitudes and all that stuff is making people have more feelings of isolation?
Well, I think what's happening in the school system is the way they're taught. They're not being taught a lot of the basic social skills. The coping skills aren't there. The note-taking skills aren't there, or they're definitely going anyway. If not, so so. And actually, in one committee that I was on, what they want to propose actually to Senate is that the new type of student is not the same as before. So if you try to apply the old standards, like in terms of actually having academic standards, that's actually elitism. I was like during that meeting, my jaw just dropped because no one else was saying anything. I was shocked about what I was actually hearing at this committee. And so
Right.
their plan actually is to implement what's called universal instructional design. And I'm not sure what the details of that, but it basically would make the course. It would basically take away your academic freedom for your own courses. And then maybe at that point, people might start to speak up. But in the meantime, that's way too much buildup in the meantime, and it's based on ideological nonsense. So saying that every student learns in a different way, and so we have to tailor our courses accordingly. And so we need to take into consideration issues like race, so that students who are African American can get through the system, or Indigenous and whatnot, because it's our attitudes that are accounting for their lack of success in academia. So it's based on all these faulty premises. And
Right.
their solution is, I think the universal instructional design is a scary, like I don't know the details of it, but just the title alone.
Right.
Because how do you structure your courses then?
Right. Um, and so I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about how you talked about the potential solutions in your lecture on YouTube,
Oh yeah.
and I would agree with you very, very strongly that we need to focus on commonalities. Anyone who's not really considered, I would say it's cultural Marxist, postmodernist kind of ideology. We should all basically unite around our rejection of that ideology. Do you think that's a good idea then?
Oh yeah, I mean all of that, it goes the exact opposite to what we already know from. It's like why I'm so adamantly opposed to it. Because
sorry, yeah, you cut out for a minute there. Could you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, so basically that whole premise of the cultural Marxism, or whatever you want to call it, it all goes against what we know from, what psychology as a field has told us. So it goes the exact opposite, which is, you first start off by finding common ground, so now you have some way of being able to relate to each other as humans. And then from there, you try to figure out how to settle your differences. And what I say in class is, you do your best to win yourself, win the other person over, but go in with the idea that maybe it's impossible. Maybe it won't be happen in our lifetime. It may take a few hundred years to get the issue settled, but as long as we're talking, we're always making progress.
Right.
And it goes against that, so I have to stand against that because it's just outright wrong.
I'm really glad you told me that, because I think for me that would be my strongest argument for people, is that pragmatically speaking, practically speaking, what we know psychologically from our research is that would contradict any positive benefit of this social justice movement.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good to know. So, do you see any pragmatically positive benefits of this kind of behavior, or is it pretty much all bad?
Well, when it's all just based on ideology, and the fact that you can't question it, I think that's the warning sign, is that with any respected discipline, they're open to criticism because they realize it's not perfect. So when you critique it, we don't get defensive. We start trying to say, oh, that might be an issue, but here's what we're trying to do to address that. So that should be the response. But the fact that they get defensive or they try to change to something else, so anything other than dealing with arguments is, they counter it with a personal attack. So I think that tells us that the school of thought actually doesn't have any merit, because they're trying to work under a premise that no matter what we say, we're always going to be right. And that's, of course, impossible. You can't have a discussion where you're always going to be right.
Right.
So the whole premise behind it is completely faulty and based on ideology.
Right. So that's a good segue then into my sort of last but broad question, and I thought maybe you could elaborate on this for me a little bit as a professor of psychology. So you might have heard here in Toronto, for example, well, as you could probably imagine, as a consequence of this social justice movement, there's a lot of identity politics on both sides that are reactionary, that are increasing. And
oh yeah.
So I would say here in Toronto, for example, I am witnessing a rise in white identitarianism. And so, for example, maybe about a month ago, some people got in trouble because they were putting up signs that said it's okay to be white around U of T and stuff like that. And I know some of the individuals that were involved in that personally. I know who they are, and I don't think they're hateful people at all. I think that, I think they're sort of in like a pressure cooker environment where they're just being bombarded with like anti-white sentiments all the time, which is contributing to the way they're reacting. And now I personally am a libertarian-minded kind of guy. If you look at my personality, I'm high in trait openness, and I'm not an identitarian. I'm an individualist, and I'm into free speech and stuff. But pragmatically, when I learn about, am I still there?
Yeah, you cut out for a moment.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was just saying, I am myself an individualist, but I think part of that is my biology tilts me that way. And so I have sympathy for other people that might be different temperamentally, that are responding to this sort of toxic culture by becoming identitarians because of, as a reaction to that. So what is the most I would like to see Canada remain, with as much personal freedoms for people as possible, and be a stable, functioning society where we can all prosper, those sorts of things, and the individual can flourish. What is the most pragmatic way to combat people's the urge that people are going to have to become identitarians as a reaction to the left-wing, sort of academically manufactured ideology that we're dealing with?
Well, the solution, I like to think, is that I'm actually trying to do what I can to be part of that solution, which is that as a child, I grew up in the 70s, right after the October crisis. So that's when I was born, was September 1970, so just 1 month before the October crisis started. So growing up in Quebec during that time period and leading up to the 1980 referendum, there was a lot of racism that I experienced being, East Indian family, first generation Canadian. So we had eggs thrown at our house, crank phone calls. I got beat up a few times with the streets I wasn't allowed to go on. So this was, outright racism. So what it's taught me is that racism is wrong in all its forms. So in my classes, I've actually talked about the white privilege and how it's one thing to just talk about on average, here's something that's wrong, but not to instill guilt based on that. So, and then I did talk a little bit about some of the new schools of thought that are coming out, like math is racism, and I actually posted a link on the course website to an actual talk given by the person. So don't believe me or the media reports. So here's some media reports on the topic. So one was from RT, which at the time I thought it was conservative media, so I was actually incorrect about that. So I'll stand corrected on that one statement that I made in class. The other was from Liz Wheeler and her commentary on it. And then I actually posted a 1-hour talk by the person. And so one of my students watched it and said, I cannot believe what that was all about, with the math being racism. So there, at least I did get the word out that way. And so what I've said in class is that I have to actually stand against this, because right now the situation as it stands is that if white people cannot stand for themselves, what's going to happen is your modern people are going to stay silent. And you know who's going to stand up then? The white supremacists, and though that's when the situation gets scary. And so I said, I'm going to do what I can as someone who has experienced racism and is not a white person, which is I'm going to stand by the it's okay to be white movement. And so for now, because we're in exam period, I'm not going to do much here at the university, but when classes start, there's going to be an it's okay to be white sign outside my door, and I dare anyone to ask me to call me a white supremacist.
Wow. Well, I commend you on that. I'm very impressed by that. So, thank you. That I'm glad that some people are willing to stand up for these people, because I don't think the people putting those signs up are necessarily hateful people. And, so I'm glad that at least some, I've been, I tried to stand up for them myself and got a lot of criticism. So coming from your position, I'm even more impressed. So thank you for that.
No, because I'm completely appalled by that. And related to the meetings with equity, what I find really appalling about the equity movement is that the people who are doing the speaking are all white leftists. And so I really find it condescending that these white leftists think they can speak for me as if I have no personal agency.
Right.
So there's nothing stopping me from saying, what I want as a brown person. So whatever I got was, I think, from what I earned. So with my position here, I know I was second on the list so I interviewed, and then I was second person on the list. And when I met with the equity rep, I said I would not have it any other way. I would not want to be moved first, because I'd always be wondering then, was I here because of my color? So I'm glad that you guys thought I was the second best candidate, not the first. I waited my turn. It was really stressful, because if this job hadn't worked out, at that point I was just going to give up on academia altogether and do something else. But given that, I would not want to be in because of my skin color. That's why I'm so strongly opposed to the notion of equity. So I'm all for no discrimination, so we have a fair process. So no one should have experienced discrimination in any form. So you should be hard just based on what you have to offer. So the whatever is irrelevant should not be taken into consideration. We should just have a level playing field. So that I will support completely, because women should be hired. No one should be hired. No one should be turned down based on what's irrelevant.
Right. Well said.
So that's the way I see it. But the equity movement, where we need to actually take this into consideration, I actually find it really condescending as someone who is, who's supposedly supposed to benefit. And I don't buy the argument, which I've heard in union meetings, which is, the whites have had their turn, and now it's someone else's turn. That whole idea of, what was a historical wrong will address now by another wrong, where it's someone else's turn to take the bus. Where my view is, we have a table, let's make the table as big as we can so everyone has a voice at it and has equal respect.
Right. I would agree with that 100%. I agree with that. That's my position as well. I have a bit of an optics problem right now or a challenge on my hands right now with Freebird Media, because I think pragmatically it's important that somebody, and I've taken on this role, maintain a dialogue with a lot of like white identitarians and white nationalists and stuff so that we know exactly what's going on and that there is conversation. And I would say on average, people that identify as white identitarians tend to be more open to speaking with me and more rational than a lot of the radical leftists. And I want to so because I've associated with people who are white identitarians, or I've interviewed people who are white identitarians, it's easy now to lump my channel in as being far right or call us conservative or something like that, which is obviously not the case. I think you can testify that the Overton window has moved such to the point that anyone that is not there is considered a right winger, and if you even associate with far right people, then you are guilty by association. How do you feel about that?
I think that's what I'm seeing. Like everything has just shifted so much that that you can't even have a conversation. And so I think with like you're just trying to reach out to all people,
right?
And so of course if the far leftists don't want to speak to you, there's not much you can do about that. Whereas others, if they do want to have their voice heard, then you're giving them an opportunity to.
That's how
And
I see
so
it.
when the mainstream media doesn't do that, so I know I had a few contacts with the CBC, and they ended up saying, "Sorry, we don't want to run with your story, at least not at this time." So unless it becomes a court challenge or something, I guess they're not interested. So,
Right.
although I think that there might be something coming from the Globe and Mail, so I'm cautiously optimistic. But until it actually does happen, I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed. I don't want to.
Right. Well, that's great. I wish you the best of luck with that. So, once again, I'd like to thank you for talking to me, and I extend an open invitation to keep a dialogue between us if there's anything else you want to talk about or disseminate to the public. Freebird Media's here whenever if you have anything to say.
No, it's great. I mean, the time has flown by, so this was quite. It was nice. Like, I was a bit nervous at the beginning because it's my first official media interview, but it's been really pleasant.
Is there anything you'd like to add as final thoughts?
I think I'll go with what I learned from Jordan Peterson. So just the one line that I've kind of adopted, which is if you have something to say and you don't say it, betray yourself. You betray yourself. And I think it is important to be true to yourself. So I think that's probably the message I would tell to the audience. If I learned nothing else, that would probably be the one thing to keep in mind.
Okay, well said. Well, once again, thank you for talking to me, and I think I'll end the conversation here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but thank you for speaking with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.